is having a beautiful day today. Today, I want to answer the question, who is the Tom Brady of the UFC? This is a question that my dad asked me not too long ago at a family dinner, and I had to stop and think about it. Because is it Conor McGregor, the double champ in the pay-per-view superstar? If you didn't know, Conor McGregor is the first ever double champion. He had a meteoric rise to the top at featherweight, where he knocked out the pound-for-pound #1 fighter in the world, Jose Aldo, with one punch, setting the UFC record for the fastest title finish ever, and still has that record. And additionally, I mentioned he's a pay-per-view superstar. Out of the top 10 combat sports pay-per-views of all time, anything, 6 of them are featuring Conor McGregor out of the top 10. But ultimately, I say no. Conor McGregor is not the Tom Brady of the UFC because he has too many losses later on in his career, ever since he had the Floyd Mayweather fight, and especially lately in his trilogy match against Dustin Poirier. So, if it's not Conor McGregor and losses make you ineligible, what about Khabib Nurmagomedov, the rival of McGregor, who retired 29-0 undefeated as lightweight champion of the UFC? Again, though, I say no. I think the infrequency at which Khabib fought during his prime and how few title defenses he had. Even though he retired undefeated, he only had a handful of title defenses, and we've seen other fighters like Tyron Woodley have a couple title defenses at welterweight and then fall off later in their career. So there's still a couple question marks in my mind in regards to Khabib Nurmagomedov, even though I do absolutely think he is one of the greatest of all time. But now, if we're saying longevity makes Khabib ineligible and losses make McGregor ineligible, how about Anderson the Spider Silva? Anderson Silva was the longest reigning middleweight champion of all time. I believe, I have to double check, I think he's the longest days, like time span, champion UFC of all time. He was the middleweight champion. He was known for his rivalries against Chael Sonnen and a lot of other fun fights. And he looked like Neo in the Matrix during his prime, like his front kick knockout against Vitor Belfort and his jab knockdowns against Yushin Okami. But again, I say no. And there's a couple things that I think makes Anderson Silva not the Tom Brady of the UFC. One of them, yes, is the fact that he got some losses later on in his career. He's had some success lately in boxing against former world champion Julio Chavez Jr. But in the UFC, in his last 8 fights, I believe he was like 1-7 and 1 no contest, I think. So not the best record to finish things off after his run as middleweight champion. But more so than that, I think also the positive steroid test against Nick Diaz makes Anderson Silva ineligible because Tom Brady has his own controversy. We'll get into that later. But he hasn't tested positive for steroids, which is something that Silva has done. But I think ultimately the biggest thing that makes him ineligible is his fights against the likes of Damian Maia, Tala's Lady, Chris Weidman, where he clowned around in the octagon and didn't take his opponent seriously. Maybe I haven't watched enough football, but I don't know. Is that something? I don't think that's something that Tom Brady does. I don't think I would think of Tom Brady of not taking their opponent seriously, which is something that unfortunately I do think of when I think of Anderson the Spider Silva. So, okay. If it's not Conor McGregor, if it's not Khabib Nurmagomedov, it's not Anderson the Spider Silva, then who is the Tom Brady of the UFC? I say it is Georges St Pierre. He is another fighter who did become a double champ, not at the same time, but he was the longest and still is the longest running welterweight champion, and he also challenged for the belt. He came out of retirement and fought Michael Bisping for the belt and won that fight and became middleweight champion. So he was champion at both 170 and 185 pounds. Additionally, he only has 2 losses in his career. They came earlier on in his career, and he avenged both of them. One of the fights against Matt Hughes, he avenged twice over, and even finished him with the same move that Matt Hughes used to finish him. So pretty cool way to tie the knot on the trilogy from Georges St Pierre. He fought absolute killers in his division. Now, Georges St Pierre isn't without his own controversy, though. I think similar to Tom Brady's deflategate, we have the Georges St Pierre Greasegate. I wanted to just bring up Greasegate to draw a comparison to Deflategate from Tom Brady and say that, hey, Georges St Pierre is not without his own controversies, but I do think that he is the Tom Brady of the UFC because of his record welterweight title defenses, because of his success in multiple weight classes, very similar to Tom Brady having success with multiple teams, both the Patriots and the Buccaneers, like he just won a Super Bowl. But ultimately, I think Georges St Pierre is the Tom Brady of the UFC. If you agree or disagree, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts or your opinions, especially from those of you who disagree. I'd like to know who you think is the Tom Brady of the UFC. If you enjoyed this video, I would greatly appreciate it if you could hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you're new to the channel, and I look forward to saying hello to you on my next stream. So peace out, everyone, and I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Let's go!